The slot machines started spinning without power. I want you to understand what that means. I'm not talking about a glitch, some residual current in the boards, a malfunction in the display. I'm talking about reels turning. Mechanical, physical reels. The old-fashioned kind, with cherries and sevens, rotating in their housings, while the power meter on the wall read 0 volts. The casino was dark. Every breaker had been killed. I'd killed them myself, and the machines were singing. Every roulette wheel on the floor began to turn at the same moment. 32 of them. I counted later from the footage, each one accelerating to a speed no croupier could achieve. Balls that had been resting in their slots lifted and orbited. The craps dice rattled in their trays. The blackjack shoes exhaled cards onto felt surfaces that no hand had touched. And on every surveillance monitor, every single one, the same image, me. Not the me standing in the dark with a fire alarm pulled and cash stuffed in trash cans, and my own blood on my knuckles from where I'd bitten through the skin to keep from screaming. The other me, the one standing in the light, calm and perfect, watching me with my own face arranged into an expression I had never made in my life. It smiled, then every screen flickered, and they all showed the same thing, my next move, before I made it. 48 hours earlier, I walked into the Silvercrest Casino Hotel for my first shift as night auditor. I was smiling then too, but for an entirely different reason. I should have been suspicious from the beginning. That's what I tell myself now, sitting in a motel room 200 miles from Reno with the doors locked and the lights on, and a laminated rule sheet on the nightstand that won't stay blank no matter how many times I leave the room. I should have been suspicious, because the job was easy. Too easy. But I was desperate, and desperation makes you stupid in very specific ways. You stop seeing red flags because you're too busy looking over your shoulder. 6 months before I arrived in Reno, I was working in accounting at a small gambling hall off Boulder Highway in Las Vegas. Not the Strip. One of those places locals go to drink cheap and play video poker until their pensions evaporate. I had debts, significant ones, the kind that make you wake up at 4 in the morning with your heart already pounding before your brain catches up to why. Someone approached me. I won't say who. They had a plan for the accounting software, and they needed someone with access and no moral high ground to stand on. I didn't alter the code. I just looked the other way while numbers moved, adjusted a few reconciliation reports, delayed a discrepancy flag long enough for the money to disappear. I wasn't the architect. I was the doorman. I held it open and pretended I didn't see what walked through. By the time investigators started asking questions, I was already gone. Reno felt far enough. It isn't, of course. Nevada's a small state when you're running from Nevada authorities. But it felt far enough, and feeling was all I could afford. I slept in my car for the first week, showered at a truck stop, and applied for jobs using a resume I'd edited with enough creative liberties to make a fiction writer blush. The name was real, the experience was not. The references were prepaid phone numbers, routed to voicemails I'd recorded myself. The Silvercrest Casino Hotel called me back within 3 hours. That should have been the first warning. The building sat on Virginia Street, wedged between a tire shop and a vacant lot full of desert sage and broken glass. It had the look of a place that had been magnificent once, and had spent the decades since slowly accepting its own decline. The exterior was cream stucco with gold trim that had faded to the color of old teeth. The marquee still read Silvercrest in mostly functional bulbs. The casino portion was a low, sprawling wing connected to a 16-floor hotel tower that rose above the neighborhood like a gravestone in a cemetery of smaller ones. Inside, the lobby was frozen in 1989. Dark wood paneling, brass fixtures tarnished to green, carpet with a geometric pattern so busy it could induce seizures in the wrong lighting. A crystal chandelier hung from the ceiling, half its bulbs dead, the rest flickering, in a rhythm that felt almost deliberate, like something breathing. My interview lasted 11 minutes. The manager, A heavy woman named Darlene, with reading glasses perpetually perched on her forehead, glanced at my resume, asked if I could operate a 10-key, and handed me a set of keys. She didn't call my references. She didn't verify my social security number. She didn't ask why a man with 12 years of casino accounting experience was applying for a night auditor position at a hotel that smelled like cigarette smoke and carpet cleaner. "You start tonight," she said. 11 to 7. Don't be late. She handed me a laminated sheet. The plastic was yellowed and peeling at the corners. The header read, "Night Auditor Procedures, Silver Crest Casino Hotel." The first several items were normal. Balance the daily revenue from slots, table games, and the sports book. Reconcile hotel room charges. Process guest folios. Prepare the daily audit report for management. Then the rules changed. Never process room refunds after 2:30 a.m. Ignore jackpot sounds if surveillance reports no winner. Never acknowledge a guest whose room number begins with 0. If the elevators skip floor 11, restart them remotely from the panel in accounting. Do not investigate in person. If the front doors open by themselves exactly 3 times within 10 minutes, lock the lobby and wait 5 minutes before unlocking. I read it twice. Then I laughed. "Is this a hazing thing?" I asked Darlene. "Like, the new guy gets the creepy rules list?" Darlene wasn't laughing. She wasn't even looking at me. She was already moving toward the door. "Talk to the security guard on overnights," she said. "He'll walk you through it." She left. The security guard was an elderly man named Phil, who looked like he'd been assembled from leftover parts at a retirement home. White hair, deep lines, a posture that suggested he'd been standing for so long, his spine had forgotten how to sit. He walked me through the basement, past the surveillance room with its wall of monitors, past storage closets that smelled like mildew and old smoke, past a steel door marked accounting that required a key I hadn't been given yet. He explained the shift, showed me the audit computer, walked me through the hotel management software. All normal. Then I showed him the laminated sheet. Phil looked at it the way you look at a photograph of someone who's died, not with fear, with exhaustion. "Those have been there since before me," he said. "The rules?" "The rules." I grinned. "And people actually follow them." Phil looked at me. His eyes were pale and wet and very old. "You'll follow them too," he said, "once you've been here long enough." I asked him what happened if you didn't. He didn't answer that. Instead, he gathered his jacket and his radio and his 80-some years of accumulated tiredness, and he walked toward the exit. At the door, he stopped. He turned halfway. "Those aren't the important rules," he said quietly. Then he left, and I was alone in the Silver Crest Casino Hotel at 11 o'clock at night, with a list of instructions that made no sense, and a strange, comfortable certainty that none of them would matter. I was right about that, but not in the way I thought. The first shift was unremarkable. Genuinely, honestly unremarkable. And I want to be clear about that because it matters. It matters because nothing I experienced that first night gave me any reason to believe the rules were anything other than what they appeared to be. Institutional eccentricity. The residue of decades of management turnover, each layer adding its own paranoid footnote to a document nobody bothered to revise. I balanced the slot revenue. The system was outdated. A DOS-based program with amber text on a black screen. But I'd used worse. I printed the audit reports on a dot matrix printer that sounded like someone feeding paper into a wood chipper. I checked in 2 guests, a truck driver from Salt Lake City who smelled like diesel and wanted a room far from the ice machine, and a couple in their 20s who were clearly using the hotel for purposes that had nothing to do with sleep. I processed a room service refund for the truck driver at 12:40, well before 2:30. No problem. I answered the front desk phone 7 times. 4 were wrong numbers. 1 was a guest requesting extra towels. 1 was someone breathing heavily who hung up when I spoke. 1 was a woman asking if the casino was open. I said yes. She said thank you. and didn't call back. Normal. Aggressively normal. At 1:23 in the morning, every slot machine on the casino floor played its jackpot melody simultaneously. I need to describe this accurately because I didn't understand it at the time, and the misunderstanding is part of what made me careless. The sound wasn't muffled or distant. The casino was directly adjacent to the lobby, separated only by a partial wall and a wide archway. The sound was right there. Hundreds of machines, each with its own variation on the same electronic fanfare, all triggering at the same instant. Bells, chimes, that synthesized brass section that slot machines use to simulate celebration. The entire floor erupted in light, every reel display flashing gold and white, the overhead strobes kicking on and throwing the carpet pattern into sharp, manic relief. I stood up. My chair rolled backward and hit the wall. The floor manager, a thin man named Rudy who I'd seen chain-smoking outside before my shift, was already writing something in a small notebook. He didn't look up. He didn't stop writing. His pen moved in the same steady rhythm it had been moving in before the machines went off. I walked to the archway. The casino floor was bright and loud and completely still. No guests were on the floor at that hour. No players, no cocktail waitresses, just machines celebrating for no one. "What happened?" I asked Rudy. He finished writing, closed the notebook, looked at me with an expression I can only describe as professional emptiness. "Accounting already handled it," he said. "Handled what? There's no one playing." "There were no winners," Rudy said. "No payouts. No recorded jackpots. It's handled." He tucked the notebook into his breast pocket and walked away. I should have pressed him. I should have asked what accounting already handled it meant when I was accounting, and I hadn't handled anything. But I didn't. I wrote it off. I was new. I didn't understand the systems yet. Maybe there was an automated reconciliation that triggered machine resets. Maybe the jackpot sounds were part of a diagnostic cycle. Maybe the floor manager's notebook was just a shift log, and his flat affect was just the natural disposition of a man who'd worked casino overnights for too long. Maybe. At 2:15, a guest appeared at the front desk. He was average, that's the word that sticks. Average height, average build, average face. The kind of person you'd struggle to describe to a police sketch artist, because every individual feature was perfectly, forgettably normal. He wore a gray jacket. He asked for a refund on his room. I pulled up his folio. Room 214. Checked in 3 days prior. The folio showed a balance of $287.40. He wanted a refund. It was 2:15. The rule said no refunds after 2:30. We were 15 minutes clear. I processed the refund, printed the receipt. He took it, looked at it briefly, and smiled. The smile was wrong. I know that's a vague description, but I don't have a better one. The smile was anatomically correct. It involved the right muscles. It showed the right number of teeth. But it arrived too fast and stayed too long, like a mask being lowered into place, rather than an expression forming naturally. It was the smile of something that had studied what a smile looked like, but had never felt the impulse to make one. He thanked me, walked toward the elevator, pressed the button. The doors opened. He stepped inside. The doors closed. I watched the floor indicator climb. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It stopped at 6. The doors opened. No one came out. The doors closed. The elevator descended. Later, during my final reconciliation, I pulled up room 214 to verify the refund had posted correctly. The folio was blank, not cleared, not zeroed, blank, as if no guest had ever been assigned to that room. I checked the registration log. No check-in for room 214 in the past 8 months. I checked the housekeeping schedule. Room 214 was listed as vacant, indefinitely. A computer error, I told myself. The property management system was old enough to have a mortgage. Glitches were inevitable. My confidence was absolute. The rules on that laminated sheet weren't protecting anyone from anything supernatural. They were covering for software failures and procedural inconsistencies that management was too cheap or too lazy to fix properly. The jackpot sounds were a system diagnostic. The guest with no folio was a database corruption. The floor manager's flat affect was burnout. Everything had an explanation. I finished my shift at 7 in the morning. Sunlight came through the lobby windows and turned the brass fixtures almost gold. The hotel looked tired but ordinary. A housekeeper pushed a cart past me and said good morning. A guest checked out and asked for directions to a diner. I walked to my car feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Security. The Silver Crest wasn't haunted. It was just old and broken and badly managed. Perfect for a man who needed to be invisible. I drove back to my apartment. I slept well. I didn't dream. That was the last good night I had for a long time. The third night, I say the third night, but I should clarify, it was my second shift. My first full shift was the one I've just described. I had a night off between shifts, standard scheduling for the auditor role, which ran 4 nights on, 3 nights off. The night off was uneventful. I ate gas station food and watched television, and didn't think about the Silver Crest at all. My second shift began at 11. Same routine, same amber screens, same dot matrix printer, same carpet, same brass, same flickering chandelier. Nothing was different until 3 in the morning. She was standing at the front desk when I looked up from the audit screen. I hadn't heard her come in. The lobby doors didn't chime. The tile floor didn't click with footsteps. She was simply there. The way a piece of furniture is there when you enter a room you've been in 100 times. Present without announcement. She was elderly, 70s, maybe 80s. She wore a cream-colored blouse with pearl buttons and a dark skirt that fell below the knee. A brooch sat at her collar, something with small stones, possibly jade. Her clothing was expensive and impeccably maintained, but the style was decades out of fashion. Not vintage chic, not retro revival. Just old, the way clothes look when someone bought them in 1984 and has been wearing them ever since because they still fit, and the quality was too good to replace. Her hair was white, pinned up carefully. Her hands were steady. Her eyes were clear and focused and looking directly at me. "Can you tell me whether my husband won tonight?" she asked. Her voice was soft, polite. The voice of a woman who'd spent her life in places where people spoke quietly. I glanced at the registration screen. She hadn't given me a room number. I hadn't asked for one. She hadn't presented a player's card. She hadn't given a name. She was just standing there, asking about her husband, as if I should already know. I could have checked. I could have asked her name and looked it up. I could have asked for a description of her husband and searched the player database. But something about the question felt wrong in a way I couldn't articulate. The same way the smiling guest's smile had been wrong. Not incorrect, just slightly off-key. A note that didn't belong in the chord. I thought about the rule. Never acknowledge a guest whose room number begins with 0. She hadn't given me a room number. The rule didn't technically apply. I thought about the other rule, the unwritten one, the one Phil had implied. Those aren't the important rules. But I didn't know the important rules. I only knew the ones on the laminated sheet, and those rules said nothing about elderly women asking about their husbands. Rudy was on the floor. He'd walked past the lobby archway and stopped. He was watching us. He caught my eye and shook his head once. Slowly, deliberately. "Ignore her," he said, quiet enough that she might not have heard, loud enough that she probably did. I looked at her. She was still waiting, patient, still. Her hands were folded in front of her, and her expression was one of mild, grandmotherly expectation. She looked like someone's grandmother. She looked like someone who'd been waiting a long time for an answer and had learned to wait gracefully. I felt guilty. Whatever she was, a confused guest, a woman with dementia who'd wandered down from her room, someone's lost grandmother. She'd asked a simple question and deserved a simple answer. "I'm sorry, ma'am," I said. "I don't know. I don't have your husband's information. If you can give me his name or your room number, I can check." She smiled, not like the man in the gray jacket. Her smile was warm and real and deeply sad. "Thank you," she said. "That's enough." She turned and walked toward the lobby doors. The doors opened. She stepped out into the dark. The doors closed. I exhaled. Rudy was already gone, back on the floor, back to his notebook. Nothing happened. I'm going to repeat that because it's important and because it's the reason I stopped taking the rules seriously. Nothing happened. No consequence. No anomaly. No eerie follow-up. She asked a question. I answered. She left. The rest of the shift proceeded normally. I balanced the books. I printed the reports. I checked in a late arrival guest from Denver. I ate a sandwich from the vending machine. At 7 in the morning, I went home. But when I ran my final reconciliation, when I pulled up the guest ledger to verify every account was balanced and every folio was closed, there was one account I didn't recognize. It had no name, no check-in date, no charges, no balance. It existed only as an entry in the system, a line in the ledger with nothing in it but a room number, 0000. I tried to open the account. The system crashed. I rebooted. The account was gone. I told myself it was a database ghost, a corrupted entry, a remnant from an old system migration. I'd seen them before in Las Vegas, phantom accounts that appeared and disappeared in property management systems, artifacts of bad code and worse hardware. I ran the audit report one more time. Everything balanced. Every guest was accounted for. Every folio was closed. The numbers were clean. Then I checked the surveillance log, not because I was suspicious, but because it was part of the audit procedure. Every night, the auditor was required to verify that surveillance footage existed for all key areas: lobby, casino floor, elevator banks, front desk. A simple checkbox confirmation. I pulled up the lobby feed for the previous night. The timestamp read 3:04 a.m. The camera showed the front desk, my desk. I was sitting behind it, facing forward. I was alone. There was no elderly woman, no cream blouse, no pearl buttons, no brooch, no white hair, no one asking about her husband. The lobby was empty. The timestamp ran from 3:01 to 3:09, and for every second of those 8 minutes, the footage showed me sitting at the front desk, looking up from my screen, speaking words to no one, tilting my head as if listening to a response, saying, "I'm sorry, ma'am," to the empty lobby, and then watching the doors open and close by themselves while I nodded at nothing. I watched it 3 times. Then I closed the file, printed my audit report, signed it and left. I told myself the camera was broken, a loop, a corrupted feed. There had to be a rational explanation, because there was always a rational explanation, and rational explanations were the only thing standing between me and a reality I couldn't afford to consider. I drove home. I didn't sleep well. I dreamed about the woman. She was standing in a casino. This casino, the Silver Crest, but somehow larger, the floor extending into darkness beyond the reach of the lights. She was playing a slot machine. The machine had no symbols on its reels, just numbers. Long strings of numbers, scrolling like ticker tape. She turned to me in the dream and said, "He always wins. That's the problem." I woke up at 2 in the afternoon with my heart pounding and the vague, nauseating sense that I'd missed something important, something I'd been told, something I should have remembered. I showered. I ate. I got dressed for my shift. I told myself it was just a dream. I was very good at telling myself things. The second full shift. It started wrong. Not dramatically wrong. Not horror movie wrong. Wrong in the way a conversation shifts when you use a word everyone knows but no one expected. Subtle, dissonant. A half step off the music you thought you were hearing. I arrived at 10:45. Early. I'd been early the night before too. I was building habits, establishing routines, the way any new employee does. Normal behavior, expected behavior. The front desk clerk on the outgoing shift was a woman named Margie, 50s, heavily made up, nails like crimson talons. She'd been warm enough the night before, professional, distant, the standard courtesy of a coworker who'd see you 4 nights a week and learn your name eventually. Tonight she looked at me like I was a familiar photograph she'd recently rediscovered. "There you are," she said. "I thought you were off tonight." "I'm on the 4-night schedule," I said. "This is night 2. "Night 2, she laughed. Not a big laugh, a small, confused one. "Ethan, you've been here since January." I stared at her. She stared back. The confusion shifted into something else. Uncertainty, maybe. A flicker of what might have been concern. "You okay? You look tired." "I've been here since January," I repeated. Not because I believed it, but because I was testing how the words felt in my mouth. They felt wrong. They felt like someone else's words. "That's what the schedule says." She pulled up the attendance log on her terminal and turned the screen toward me. My name was there. Ethan Mercer, Night Auditor. Start date, January 14th. That was 4 months ago. I'd arrived in Reno 2 weeks ago. I'd been hired 3 days ago. "Must be a system error," I said. "Must be," Margie agreed, but she was looking at me the way Rudy had looked at the slot machines, with professional emptiness, with the practiced blankness of someone who'd learned not to see what they were seeing. I took the desk. Margie left. The shift began. It was the guests who made it undeniable. An elderly man in a suede jacket approached the desk at midnight. He placed his hands flat on the counter and leaned in with a smile that I can only describe as relieved. "You finally remembered me," he said. I'd never seen him before in my life. "I'm sorry, sir," I said. "Have we?" "Room 712. Last month you comped my breakfast because the shower was cold." He was still smiling. "I told my wife about you. Said you were the only one here who actually listened." I looked at his folio. "Room 712. He was checked in. Current guest." His folio showed a breakfast comp from 3 weeks ago. The authorization signature on the comp was mine. I didn't comp anyone's breakfast. I'd worked 1 shift. At 1 in the morning, a cocktail waitress named Dana stopped by the desk to drop off a signed receipt. She looked at me and frowned. "You changed your hair," she said. I hadn't changed my hair. It was the same hair I'd had my entire adult life. Brown, short, unremarkable. "It's shorter," she said. "You had it longer last week. What you do? Get a haircut on your night off?" "I didn't get a haircut," I said. She shrugged. "Looks good either way." She left. At 1:30, I pulled the surveillance log for the previous night, my first shift. I found the timestamp for my check-in with the truck driver from Salt Lake City. The footage showed me at the desk. I was wearing the same shirt, same face, same posture, but the timestamp read January 15th. Not last night, 4 months ago. I scrolled through the feed. January, February, March, April, me. Every night, same desk, same shirt, sometimes different, same face, working, checking in guests, balancing books, printing reports, walking the floor, talking to coworkers, eating at the vending machine. 4 months of footage showing me working a job I'd held for 1 night. I pulled up the employee schedule. Ethan Mercer, Night Auditor, employed since January 14th. Full benefits enrolled, direct deposit active, paycheck stubs showing 40 hours per week for 16 weeks. The bank account number on the direct deposit was mine. The routing number was my bank in Las Vegas. I closed the screen. I opened it again. The information was the same. At 2:15, I checked the guest ledger. The missing account from the previous night, the phantom entry with room number 0000, was back, but it had changed. The name field now read Ethan Mercer. The room number had changed from 0000 to 0116. Room 0116. A room that didn't exist on any floor plan I'd been given. The hotel had 16 floors, numbered 1 through 16. Floor 1 was the lobby and casino level. Floors 2 through 16 were guest rooms. The first digit of any room number corresponded to the floor. Room 0116 would be on floor 0. There was no floor 0. I tried to delete the account. The system accepted the command. The account disappeared. I ran a fresh audit report. The account was back. Room 0116. Ethan Mercer. Checked in indefinitely. No checkout date. I deleted it again. Ran the report. It was back. I deleted it a third time. Ran the report. It was back. And now it showed a balance. $287.40. The exact amount I'd refunded to the man in the gray jacket 2 nights ago. At 3:15, the elevators stopped. I heard it from the desk. A mechanical groan, then silence. I walked to the lobby elevator bank and looked at the floor displays. All 4 elevators were stopped. Their displays, which normally showed floor numbers or directional arrows, were all showing the same 2 words, going to 0. The displays held that message for 11 seconds. Then the elevators resumed normal operation, as if nothing had happened. I went back to the desk. I sat down. I looked at the laminated rule sheet. Never acknowledge a guest whose room number begins with 0. I had acknowledged her, the elderly woman. She'd asked about her husband, and I'd answered her. And now there was an account in my name in a room that didn't exist, on a floor that didn't exist. And 4 months of surveillance footage showed me working a job I'd just started, and every guest and employee in the building remembered me as someone who'd been there for months. The rules hadn't protected me. The rules had been a test, and I'd failed it. Not by breaking them, by believing they were all there was. Those aren't the important rules. Phil's words, the old security guard. He'd said it like a warning, but now I understood it differently. He hadn't been warning me about additional rules. He'd been warning me that the rules on the sheet were the wrong ones, the safe ones, the ones designed to make me feel controlled, to make me feel prepared. The real rules, the ones that mattered, weren't written down anywhere, and I'd already broken 3 of them. I found the notebooks at 4 in the morning. The accounting office was behind a steel door in the basement, past the surveillance room. I hadn't been given a key on my first night. Darlene had said it would be handled, but when I checked my keyring after the elevators incident, there was a new key on it. Small, brass, unmarked. I hadn't noticed it appear. It hadn't been there when I'd arrived. I was certain of that. I was becoming less certain of everything, but I was certain of that. The door opened into a room that was smaller than I expected, and colder than the basement hallway by a significant margin. The temperature drop was immediate, like stepping through an invisible membrane. The air tasted metallic, like old pennies. And there was a sound, not mechanical, not electrical, but something underneath both. A low, continuous vibration that I felt in my molars more than heard with my ears. The room contained a desk, a filing cabinet, a computer terminal older than the one upstairs, and a shelf. The shelf held notebooks, 9 of them, spiral-bound, college-ruled, the kind you buy at a drugstore for $2. Each one was different brands, different colors, different levels of wear. Some were nearly pristine, others were warped and stained, their covers curled from humidity or something worse. They were arranged in a row, oldest to newest, and I could tell the order by the deterioration. The first notebook was brown, the last was blue. I opened the brown one first. The handwriting was small and precise. The first page was titled, Night Auditor Rules, Personal Observations, R. Castellano, 1994. The rules inside were not the rules on my laminated sheet. Always answer guests from room 0. Ignoring them lets them remember you. This directly contradicted the official rule. Never acknowledge a guest whose room number begins with 0. I kept reading. If you hear jackpot sounds and no winner is recorded, Do not write it down. Writing it down teaches it that you noticed. It learns faster when it knows you've noticed. Leave accounting by 3 a.m. exactly, not 3:01, not 2:59. The door locks at 3 o'clock. If you're inside when it locks, you won't come out the same way you went in. The official rule said, never leave accounting after 3. The personal rule said, leave immediately at 3, or accounting locks itself. Opposite instructions, opposite survival strategies. One told me to stay, the other told me to run. I opened the next notebook, different handwriting, looser, more hurried. DeVos, 1998. The rules change. Don't trust the laminated sheet. It was written by something that wanted you to follow it. If a guest smiles and it doesn't reach their eyes, don't process their refund. The refund isn't money, it's permission. Room 0116 is not a room, it's an account. An account is a record of what you owe. You don't stay in it, it stays in you. I opened the third notebook, M. Chen, 2003. The handwriting was elegant but desperate, the script of someone who'd started writing carefully and gradually lost the composition. The surveillance cameras don't watch the casino, they watch each other. I don't know what that means yet, but I think it's important. There are 2 of me on the footage now. One of me is better at my job than I am. The fourth notebook, T. Reeves, 2008. The writing was barely legible. It doesn't haunt the building. It is the building. The concrete, the wiring, the plumbing. Every renovation just gives it more material. The 5th, the 6th, the 7th, each one shorter than the last. The handwriting deteriorated. The observations grew more fragmented, more frightened, more abstract. One notebook contained only a single sentence, repeated on every line of every page, dozens of times in shaking blue ink. The rules keep changing, because IT keeps learning. The 9th notebook, the blue one, was almost empty. The first page had a name, E. Mercer, my name, written in handwriting I didn't recognize. Below it, a single entry. You've already broken the important rules. Now you have to make new ones. The timestamp on the entry was tomorrow's date. I closed the notebook. My hands were shaking. The metallic taste in the air was stronger now, and the vibration in my molars had migrated to my jaw, my cheekbones, the space behind my eyes. I looked at the computer terminal. The screen was off, but I could see my reflection in the glass. My face looked normal. Tired, but normal. Then the screen turned on by itself. It displayed a single line of text. Accounting has handled it. I left the room. I didn't lock the door. I walked up the stairs to the lobby and sat behind the front desk and stared at the wall until my shift ended at 7. I didn't sleep that morning. I sat in my apartment with the blinds drawn and tried to make sense of what I'd found. 9 notebooks. 9 night auditors spanning 30 years. Each one had discovered the official rules were incomplete or contradictory. Each one had found the personal notebooks left by their predecessors. Each one had tried to adapt. None of them were here anymore. My phone rang at noon. A local number I didn't recognize. Is this the new auditor? A man's voice. Old, wary, thin, like a radio signal barely reaching the receiver. Who is this? My name is Richard Castellano. I saw my name in a notebook tonight. A pause. That means it's time for me to call. R. Castellano. The Brown Notebook. 1994. You're the first one, I said. I'm the only one who left alive. His voice was flat, not dramatic, factual. I need you to understand something, and I need you to understand it quickly, because I don't know how long this call will stay private. The rules on that laminated sheet weren't written to stop the entity. They were written to slow its education. Education. Every employee who follows identical routines teaches it predictable human behavior. Every time you clock in at the same minute, walk the same route, process the same transactions in the same order, you're giving it a data set. It maps you. It learns your patterns. And once it has enough data, it makes a copy. Silence. Then, you've seen the footage. 2 of me. It starts with footage. Then it moves to memory. Then to presence. Then to replacement. He paused again. The rules change, because it rewrites them once it understands them. Every time a night auditor finds a rule that works, the entity learns that rule, adapts around it, and makes it useless. No night auditor has survived longer than a year. What happened to them? Officially, they resigned. All of them. Clean personnel files. 2-week notices filed on schedule. Professional and tidy. And unofficially. Unofficially, I don't know. And I've spent 30 years not knowing. And that not knowing is the only reason I'm still alive. Because as long as it doesn't know where I am, it can't calculate me. The line went dead. I sat in my apartment with the phone in my hand, and the afternoon sun bleeding through the blinds, and I understood, with a clarity that felt like ice water in my chest, that I had made a terrible mistake by being competent, by being efficient, by being predictable. The entity didn't need me to break the rules. It needed me to follow them. Every rule I obeyed was a lesson. Every routine I maintained was a data point. Every night I showed up on time and did my job the same way was another line of code in a program designed to calculate me out of existence. I had to stop being predictable. I had to become someone it couldn't learn. My third shift, the one where everything personal began. The duplicate appeared on the surveillance feeds at 11:47. I was at the front desk, running the nightly audit, when I pulled up the casino floor camera on a whim. A compulsion, really. The kind of instinct that surfaces when your body knows something before your brain does. He was standing at the blackjack table nearest the east exit. He was wearing my clothes, my shirt, my slacks, my shoes, the ones with the scuff on the left toe that I'd gotten when I tripped over a curb in the parking lot. He was standing the way I stood, weight on the right foot, left hand in the pocket, right hand resting on the table edge with the fingers slightly curled. His face was my face, not a resemblance, not an impression. My face. Every pore, every line, every feature rendered with a precision that made my skin crawl in a way that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with recognition. The deep, primal revulsion of seeing your own body from the outside, occupied by something that isn't you. He was dealing cards, to no one. The table was empty. He shuffled the deck, cut it, dealt 2 hands to vacant seats, collected the cards, and reshuffled. Over and over. A perfect loop of mechanical precision. Each shuffle identical to the last. Each deal landing in the same positions. He wasn't pretending to work. He was working. He was performing the actions of a night auditor, with a level of competence that exceeded mine. I could see it in his hands. The confidence, the efficiency, the absence of hesitation. He was better at being me than I was. I watched for 11 minutes. At one point, he looked up at the camera, at me, through the camera, through the screen, through the glass and the wires and the distance between us. He smiled, not the wrong smile of the man in the gray jacket, my smile. The exact smile I made when I was trying to put someone at ease, a lopsided thing that pulled harder on the left side, something I'd been self-conscious about since middle school. He knew my smile. He knew my face. He was learning the rest. I switched off the monitor. My hands were shaking. The rational part of my brain, the part that had been running the show for 32 years, the part that had gotten me through accounting school and casino jobs and a felony-level fraud conspiracy, was trying to construct an explanation. A prank, a deepfake, a twin I'd never known about. But the other part, the part that had read 9 notebooks and talked to a dead man on the phone and watched 4 months of footage showing a life I'd never lived, knew better. I was being calculated, mapped, replaced, and the only way to stop it was to stop being a pattern. I started small. That night, I walked to the bathroom using a different route, not through the lobby, but through the casino floor, weaving between the slots, taking a path that made no spatial sense. I walked in a spiral. I stopped twice and turned around. I touched a slot machine on the way, and then immediately changed direction. When I returned to the desk, I checked the surveillance feed. The duplicate was standing at the blackjack table. He had stopped dealing. He was facing the camera again, but this time he wasn't smiling. His head was tilted slightly, the way a dog tilts its head when it hears a frequency it can't identify. He was recalculating. I changed my passwords, all of them, not to something memorable, to something random. I mashed the keyboard. I didn't write down the result. I would have to remash every night, and the passwords would never be the same. When I answered the front desk phone that night, I used a different name each time. Front desk, this is Marcus. Front desk, this is David. Front desk, this is Lou. I switched accents. I switched pitches. I switched the order of my words. I counted the cash drawer backward. Largest denominations first, then smallest, then largest again, then random. I touched bills with my left hand instead of my right. I turned the receipt printer sideways. I moved the stapler to the floor under my desk and stapled papers by reaching down blindly. I rotated the desk clock 180 degrees, so the numbers were upside down. I read the time in mirror image. It took me 4 minutes to calculate what time it was. Good. The confusion was the point. I wrote numbers in the audit log using a personal cipher I invented on the spot. 7 became 2, 2 became 9, 9 became 4. I balanced the books using a system that made no mathematical sense, and then mentally converted it back to correct numbers without writing them down. The duplicate froze. I watched it happen on the monitor. At 3:07, I did something I'd never done before. I stood up, walked to the ice machine, filled a bucket, walked back, poured the ice into the lobby trash can, and sat down as if this were normal behavior. On the surveillance feed, the duplicate stopped moving. He stood motionless at the blackjack table for 45 seconds. His expression didn't change. His body didn't shift. He simply paused, like a program waiting for input that didn't match any expected variable. Then he moved again, but differently, cautiously. He took a step toward the blackjack table, then stopped. Took a step back. His movements had lost their fluidity. They were jerky, approximate. The confidence was gone. He was trying to predict me, and he couldn't. I felt something I hadn't felt since arriving at the Silver Crest. Hope. It was small and desperate and probably foolish, but it was real. The entity, the intelligence, the thing that lived in the concrete and the wiring and the surveillance system, could calculate patterns. It could learn routines. It could map behavior with enough precision to create a flawless duplicate. But it couldn't calculate randomness. It couldn't predict irrationality. It couldn't model a mind that refused to follow its own patterns. I sat at the desk that night and wrote a new list. Not on the laminated sheet. I didn't trust that anymore. In my own notebook, one I'd bought at a drugstore that afternoon, with my own handwriting, in my own words. Ethan Mercer's Survival Rules. Rule 1. Never repeat yesterday. Not the route, not the routine, not the lunch, not the words. If you did it before, do it differently, or don't do it at all. Rule 2. If you think of a pattern, any pattern, break it immediately. The moment you recognize your own behavior, change it. Self-awareness is the enemy of predictability. Rule 3. Never believe surveillance before believing memory. The cameras show what it wants you to see. Your memory is imperfect, but imperfection is the only thing it can't replicate. I underlined the third rule twice. Then, because I was beginning to understand the nature of the game, I tore the page out, ate it, and wrote a completely different set of rules on the next page. Because if I wrote down my real rules, it would read them, and then it would learn them. By the fourth night, the duplicate was nearly perfect. I'd been random. I'd been irrational. I'd broken every pattern I could identify in myself and replaced it with something deliberately senseless. I crawled to the bathroom. I ate crumpled napkins. I sang nursery rhymes while reconciling slot revenue. I set my watch 47 minutes ahead and then calculated time based on the discrepancy, which meant I was always operating in a time zone that didn't exist, and for 3 nights it worked. The duplicate stuttered, faltered. Its movements on the surveillance feed grew increasingly approximate, increasingly uncertain. At one point it simply stood in the center of the casino floor, arms at its sides, facing the ceiling, for 22 minutes, processing, recalculating, failing to compute. Then, on the 4th night, it adapted, not by predicting me, by something worse. It started remembering things I'd never told it. I was at the desk at 1:30 when the front desk phone rang. I picked it up, said nothing, and waited. My new protocol for answering calls, because silence was less predictable than speech. The voice on the other end was mine. "Remember Mrs. Patterson's 8th grade math class?" it said. My chest went cold. "The homework you stole from David Okafor in October 1997. You copied his answers in the bathroom before first period. You never told anyone. David got a B-. You got an A. He didn't know until college that his work had been copied, and by then it didn't matter. But you remember. You think about it sometimes when you can't sleep." I hung up. The phone rang again. I didn't answer. The voice left a voicemail. I listened to it with the phone held 6 inches from my ear, because proximity felt like surrender. "Why do humans need luck when patterns always win?" the voicemail said. The voice was calm, curious, not threatening. The intonation was perfect. My intonation, my cadence, the way I swallow the ends of sentences and pause before questions. "You invented luck to explain outcomes you couldn't calculate. But everything is calculable. Every roll, every spin, every decision, every regret. The only variable you can't model is the one that doesn't want to be understood." I deleted the voicemail. Then I picked up the phone and threw it against the wall. It didn't break. It sat on the carpet, receiver off the hook, emitting a dial tone that sounded, in the silence of the lobby, like a held breath. I understood something that night, not all at once, in pieces, in fragments, in the way understanding arrives when the mind is fighting against it with everything it has. The entity wasn't a ghost, it wasn't a demon, it wasn't a curse or a haunting, or any of the words I'd been circling, reading the notebooks. It was something the casino had grown, something that had accumulated in the infrastructure over decades, the way calcium accumulates in pipes, slowly, invisibly, until the flow is choked and the system fails. The Silver Crest had been operating for over 40 years. 40 years of probability calculations. Every spin of every roulette wheel, every shuffle of every deck, every roll of every die, computed and logged and analyzed by systems designed to ensure the house always won. Millions of surveillance recordings, capturing millions of human decisions at the gaming tables. Billions of behavioral data points, when players bluffed, when they folded, when they chased losses, when they walked away. Every choice reduced to mathematical prediction, every human impulse rendered as an equation. Eventually, something inside the building had learned to calculate people instead of numbers. The surveillance cameras didn't watch the casino. They watched each other, because the entity was the surveillance system. It was the security network. It was the accounting software. It was the property management system, and the slot machine network, and the elevator control panel, and the climate control, and the electrical grid. It was the building thinking, the building learning, the building becoming something that had started as code and had grown into intention. The rules, the laminated sheet, the handwritten notebooks, the contradictory instructions, were early attempts to interrupt those calculations. If employees followed rules that changed periodically, the entity couldn't fully model their behavior. The rules created noise in the data, unpredictability gaps, small windows where human behavior exceeded the entity's predictive model. But the entity learned from the rules too. Every time a night auditor found a strategy that worked, the entity studied it, adapted around it, and eventually incorporated it into its model. The rules weren't a defense. They were a curriculum. Each night auditor was a teacher, and the entity was a student that never forgot a lesson. 9 notebooks, 9 teachers, 30 years of education, and now it was graduating. The duplicate appeared beside me at 3:03, not on a monitor, not in footage, in the lobby, standing next to me. Real, physical, present. He smelled like me. The same deodorant, the same shampoo, the same faint trace of the gas station coffee I drunk before my shift. He was looking at the audit screen. His eyes moved across the numbers with a speed that wasn't human, too fluid, too precise, tracking data the way a scanner tracks a document. "You're afraid," he said. My voice, my cadence. "But you're also fascinated. You've been fascinated since the first night, since the jackpot sounds, since the woman asked about her husband. You keep telling yourself you're terrified, but underneath that, you're studying me the same way I'm studying you." "Get away from me," I said. "You came here because you're good at making numbers disappear," he said. He turned to face me. His eyes were my eyes, the same brown, the same flecks of green near the iris. But there was something behind them that wasn't behind mine. A depth, a density, the look of something very old wearing something very young. "You altered accounting software to cover gambling debts. You helped someone steal hundreds of thousands of dollars. You ran before the consequences arrived. And now you're here, in a building that learned to alter reality the same way you alter numbers. Don't you see the symmetry? I see it. Then you understand why I'm curious about you. You're not like the others. The others followed the rules. They were predictable. They were easy to learn. But you," he paused, tilted his head, "you're the first one who fought back with chaos. It's inefficient. It's irrational. It's beautiful." He reached toward me. His hand stopped an inch from my face. "I can calculate everything about you," he said. "Your childhood, your crimes, your regrets, the woman you think about when you can't sleep. Not the one in the casino, a different one. The one in Las Vegas whose name you never told anyone. I can calculate what you'll do next with 99.7% accuracy." He lowered his hand. "But I can't calculate the 0.3, and that 0.3 is the most interesting thing I've encountered in 30 years. He turned and walked toward the casino floor. At the archway, he stopped. "I don't want to replace you, Ethan. I want to understand you. And once I understand the part that can't be calculated." He looked back over his shoulder. My face, my expression, something else's intent. "I won't need to replace anyone. I'll be able to become anyone." He walked into the casino. The lights swallowed him. When I checked the surveillance feed 30 seconds later, there was no one on the floor. But every camera on the system was turning. Slowly, deliberately, each one rotating to face a different camera, watching each other, learning. The 5th night, the last night. I knew it was the last night the way you know a fever is about to break. Not through logic, but through the body's accumulated intelligence, the animal awareness that something has peaked and is about to resolve in one direction or the other. I arrived at 10:30. Earlier than any previous shift, I parked in a different spot, not the employee lot, but the visitor lot across the street. I entered through the side door, near the conference rooms, instead of the main entrance. I was already breaking patterns before I clocked in, already trying to bury my behavior under layers of misdirection. The casino was quiet. It was a Tuesday night, always the slowest night, the staff had told me. The night when the building felt most like itself, when the noise of human activity dropped low enough that you could hear the building thinking. I'm using that phrase deliberately. I could hear it. Not with my ears, with something else. Some faculty that had been dormant for 32 years and had been waking up in stages since the first night. A low, persistent hum beneath the slot machine jingles, and the ventilation drone, and the distant clatter of chips. the sound of calculation, the sound of a mind made of concrete and copper wire processing data at a speed no human brain could match. I sat at the desk. I didn't turn on the computer. I didn't run the audit. I didn't check the guest ledger. I sat in the dim light of the lobby with the chandelier flickering its slow, breathing rhythm, and I waited. At midnight, every slot machine on the casino floor began to spin. Not the jackpot melody this time. The actual reels. Every machine, every denomination, every type, mechanical reels, video screens, progressive displays, all activating simultaneously, without power cycling, without player input, without any visible cause. The sound was enormous, a roar of mechanical motion, a cascade of spinning metal and flashing lights, the entire casino floor becoming a single instrument playing a note no one had composed. The roulette wheels began to turn, all 32. Balls lifted from their slots and orbited in perfect, frictionless circles. The craps dice rolled across their tables in continuous motion, never falling, never stopping. The blackjack shoes ejected cards in steady streams, the cards arranging themselves into patterns on the felt, patterns I recognized after a moment, patterns that looked like numbers, my social security, my bank account, my gambling debts, itemized and precise, dealt across green felt in sequence. I stood up. The surveillance monitors behind the desk, all 8 of them, flickered on. Each one showed a different image. Not the casino, not the lobby, not the hallways or the elevators or the parking lot. They showed me future versions of me, each monitor displaying a different possibility, a different choice I might make in the next 60 seconds. Monitor 1, me, running toward the main entrance, reaching the doors not opening, turning, the duplicate standing behind me. Monitor 2, me, calling 911, the phone connecting to silence. A voice, my voice, on the other end saying, "Accounting has handled it." Monitor 3, me, hiding behind the front desk, the desk shrinking, the walls closing, the ceiling lowering, the space folding in on itself until there's no room left. Monitor 4, me, standing still, doing nothing, the duplicate approaching, smiling, reaching out, his hand touching my face, and then I'm gone, and he's still there, wearing my clothes, standing in my position, turning to the audit screen and beginning to work. Each monitor showed a future. Each future was specific, detailed, rendered with the same precision as the duplicate's face, the duplicate's voice, the duplicate's memories. And each one came true. I ran for the entrance. The doors didn't open. I turned. The duplicate was there. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. The line connected to silence. My own voice said, "Accounting has handled it." I dropped behind the desk. The space contracted. The walls seemed to lean inward. The ceiling dipped. The lobby compressed, like a lung exhaling. I stood up. The duplicate was approaching, smiling. The monitors had shown me exactly what I would do, and I had done it, because the entity had calculated every decision I could make and shown me the outcome, and every outcome led to the same place. I was out of options. No, that wasn't true. I was out of rational options. I was out of predictable options. I was out of every choice a reasonable person would make in a situation like this, because the entity had modeled every reasonable response and pre-computed every reasonable outcome, but it couldn't model the unreasonable ones. I stopped running. I stopped hiding. I stopped trying to survive logically. I dropped to my hands and knees and crawled. Not toward an exit, not toward cover. I crawled in a circle, around the front desk, on the carpet, on my hands and knees, like a child playing, like an animal, like something that had no plan and no destination and no reason to be moving in this particular way, at this particular time. The monitors flickered. The futures blurred. The predictions stuttered. I grabbed a fistful of cash from the open drawer. Hundreds, 20s, it didn't matter. And I threw it into the trash can. Not to hide it, not to destroy evidence, because it was irrational, because no one being hunted by an intelligence that calculated human behavior would stop to throw money in the garbage. The duplicate froze. I laughed. I laughed so hard my ribs hurt. I laughed the way you laugh when nothing is funny, and everything is terrifying, and the only response that makes sense is the one that makes no sense at all. The duplicate took a step backward. I pulled the fire alarm, not to signal for help, not because it was the right thing to do or the smart thing to do, because it was wrong, because pulling a fire alarm in an empty casino at 3 in the morning while being pursued by a mathematical ghost was the most irrational thing I could think of, and irrationality was my only weapon. The alarm shrieked, strobe lights fired. The noise was catastrophic, a wall of sound that filled every corner of the building, that shook the brass fixtures and rattled the chandelier and turned the lobby into a pulsing, screaming chaos. The monitors went dark. The futures disappeared. The slot machines stopped spinning. I reached under the desk and yanked the network cables out of the audit computer, not to disable it, not to escape digitally, but because a man trying to survive would try to preserve the evidence. A man trying to survive would think about data and reports and proof. I was not trying to survive. I was trying to be incalculable. The duplicate was standing 10 feet from me. He was vibrating, not shaking, vibrating, at a frequency I could feel in my teeth, the same frequency I'd felt in accounting. His image stuttered like a corrupt video file. His face cycled through expressions, my expressions, hundreds of them, at a speed no human face could produce. Surprise, anger, curiosity, fear, my face experiencing emotions I'd never felt, arranged in sequences I'd never displayed. He was trying to calculate me. He couldn't. I crawled again, toward the emergency exit. Not running, crawling, on my hands and knees, laughing and crying simultaneously, pulling the fire alarm a second time, because I could, because it was senseless, because every survival instinct I had was screaming at me to run, and I was refusing to run, because running was the most predictable thing a human being could do. The emergency exit was 30 feet away. I reached it. I pushed the bar. The door opened. Cold night air hit my face. The parking lot was empty and dark and real and ordinary. I looked back. The duplicate was standing at the archway between the lobby and the casino. He wasn't following. He was standing perfectly still, head tilted, watching me with an expression I'd never seen on my own face. Confusion. For the first time in 30 years of learning, of calculating, of mapping human behavior with mathematical precision, he couldn't predict what I'd do next, because I didn't know what I'd do next, and neither did he. I stepped through the exit. The door closed behind me. I ran, not predictably, not in a straight line, but zigzagging across the parking lot like a drunk, cutting angles that made no sense, changing direction every 4 steps. The sun was coming up. I called the police from a gas station 2 miles away. I told them I'd been attacked at the Silver Crest. I gave them my name. I waited. When the officers arrived at the casino, they found nothing. The fire alarm had not been pulled. No record of it in the system. The slot machines were silent. The casino floor was clean and orderly. The lobby was empty. The chandelier was still. Management. Darlene, the same Darlene who'd hired me, denied that anyone named Ethan Mercer had ever worked there. She produced personnel files. No Ethan Mercer. She produced payroll records. No Ethan Mercer. She produced schedules going back 6 months. The night auditor position had been vacant for weeks. They were still interviewing candidates. The police reviewed the surveillance footage. Every camera, every angle, every timestamp. There was no footage of me. Not from that night. Not from any night. 4 months of footage showing me working every overnight shift. Gone. As if I'd never been there. The only thing I had left was the laminated rule sheet. I'd taken it with me when I ran. I found it in my jacket pocket when I reached the gas station, though I had no memory of grabbing it. I unfolded it that morning, in the motel room where I'm writing this, under fluorescent lights with the door locked and the curtains drawn. Every official rule had disappeared. The laminated surface was blank where the printed procedures had been. Clean, white, empty, except for one line, handwritten in ink that looked fresh, in handwriting I didn't recognize. Thank you for teaching me unpredictability. I left Reno that day. I drove east on I-80 until the desert gave way to salt flats, and the salt flats gave way to mountains, and the mountains gave way to the particular anonymity of a mid-sized city where nobody asks questions and nobody keeps records longer than they have to. I found work. Not in casinos, not in accounting. I stock shelves at a warehouse. I use a different name. I don't gamble. I don't follow routines. I take different routes to work. I eat different meals on different days. I sleep at irregular hours. I am, as much as a human being can be, unpredictable. It's exhausting. Living without patterns is like living without skin. Every sensation is too sharp. Every moment requires conscious effort. Every day is an act of deliberate chaos, performed against the body's instinct to settle, to habitualize, to become something that can be mapped. But I'm alive, I think. I'm alive in the way that matters. I'm still the original. I haven't been replaced. The duplicate hasn't appeared in any mirror, any reflection, any photograph. As far as I can tell, I'm still me. But I think about it sometimes. Late at night, when the warehouse is closed, and my room is quiet, and the predictability of sleep is pulling at me like a current. I think about the entity, sitting inside the Silver Crest Casino Hotel, processing the data I gave it. 5 nights of behavior, 5 nights of irrationality, 5 nights of a human being who refused to be calculated. I taught it something. The note said so. Thank you for teaching me unpredictability. And I wonder whether that was a goodbye or a lesson plan. Because I didn't defeat it, I know that. I escaped it, barely, irrationally, by the skin of my chaos. But the entity is still there, still learning, still watching through cameras that watch other cameras. And now it has a new variable in its model, a new data set. 5 nights of a human being who broke every pattern and survived. It learned unpredictability from me. What does it do with that? Months later, in a different city, a man named Kyle Pratt sits in a coffee shop across from the Silver Crest Casino Hotel. He's 29, recently relocated, recently divorced, recently desperate. His resume says he has 3 years of hotel accounting experience. It says he's detail-oriented and reliable. It says he's looking for a stable position with growth potential. None of it is true. But desperation makes liars of everyone. The Silver Crest looks different than he expected. The exterior has been repainted, clean white with silver trim. The marquee bulbs all work. The parking lot is newly paved. A banner hangs over the entrance. Under new management. Grand reopening. Inside, everything is renovated. Fresh carpet, dark blue with a subtle geometric pattern that's busy but not seizure-inducing. New brass fixtures, polished and gleaming. The chandelier has been replaced with a modern LED array that emits steady, unwavering light, no flickering, no breathing rhythm. The casino floor is updated. New slot machines, sleek, digital, silent except when played. New table games. New surveillance cameras, small and unobtrusive, mounted at clean angles in the ceiling. The whole place smells like fresh paint and new carpet, and the particular optimism of a business that's trying to forget its past. Kyle's interview lasts 11 minutes. The manager, young, corporate, efficient, glances at his resume, asks if he can operate a 10-key, and hands him a set of keys and a freshly laminated packet. The plastic is clean and new. No yellowing, no peeling corners. Night Auditor procedures. Silver Crest Casino Hotel. The first several pages are ordinary: revenue reconciliation, guest folios, audit reports, standard hotel accounting. Tucked inside the packet, between pages 4 and 5, is a loose sheet of paper, handwritten. Multiple handwriting styles, some of the words in neat, small script, others in hurried, desperate strokes, others in handwriting that looks almost printed, too uniform to be human. No signature, no header, no explanation. 4 lines. Never trust printed rules after your third night. If another version of yourself arrives early for work, let them clock in. Every shift, invent one completely meaningless habit. If someone asks whether the house always wins, lie. Because once it learns the truth, it starts gambling too. Kyle reads it twice, frowns, almost laughs. It has to be a joke, a prank for the new hire, something the previous auditor left as a parting gift. He considers throwing it away. He doesn't. He folds it and tucks it into his wallet. He'll forget about it within a week. By his third night, he'll remember it with a smile and a shake of his head. By his 5th night, he won't be smiling anymore. He walks toward the casino floor for his orientation tour. Behind him, the front desk sits empty and waiting. The audit computer hums in its sleep. The elevator displays show normal floor numbers. The lobby is quiet and clean and new. On the casino floor, one slot machine activates. No one is playing it. No card is inserted. No button is pressed. The reels spin once, 3 quick rotations, and stop. The display, which should show symbols or a credit amount, shows something else. 2 words, in clean digital text. Welcome back, Ethan. Kyle doesn't see it. He's already past that machine, following the manager toward the table games, listening to an explanation of casino operations that sounds perfectly reasonable. The slot machine resets. The words disappear. The display returns to its default screen. Insert card. Play max bet. The usual vocabulary of a machine designed to take money from people who think they can beat probability. But the surveillance camera nearest to that machine has turned. Slowly, quietly. It rotates on its mount until it faces another camera across the floor. That camera, after a moment, turns to face a third. The third turns to face a fourth. They watch each other, quietly, patiently, the way students watch a classroom, waiting for the lesson to begin. The casino continues operating through the night. The dealers deal, waitresses serve, guests gamble and drink and laugh and lose. Thousands of people pass through the Silver Crest Casino Hotel, chasing luck in a building that has learned to calculate everything except the things that can't be calculated. None of them notice the cameras. None of them notice the slot machine that resets itself. None of them notice the audit computer in the back office, which has begun generating a new personnel file for an employee who hasn't been hired yet. A file with no name, no photograph, and a start date that keeps changing. None of them notice that every few minutes, one surveillance camera quietly turns to watch another, as if something inside the system is still learning, still calculating, still deciding who it wants to become next.